Hello everybody, welcome back to Short Shot Archery. Anthony here, and today I want to talk about my experience at USA Archery National Outdoor Championships. This year it was in Dublin, Ohio, and yeah, I took notes across the whole course of the tournament on things that I, just happened to notice, either good or bad. And in this video, I'm just going to go through them and share my thoughts with you, see if we can get a conversation going. If anybody has any input to, put that down in the comments section if you have any ideas or your own experiences. And other than that, yeah, let's get started with, my experience at Outdoor Nationals. So first on my list is the weather. A few complaints about the weather. It did get a little bit rainy, but you can't control the weather, but what you can control is finding a field that has, the parking lot pretty close to it, where you don't have to walk a long distance, especially if the weather gets really bad, like we get a lightning delay or something like that, which actually did happen at the Nationals in Dublin. We did have a couple lightning delays, but the bonus is the parking lot is super close, at least compared to Nationals in the past. Now, I was at the Nationals in Indiana. You had to walk across several lengths of soccer fields. That was crazy to get to the parking lot. Even worse was Alabama, where you actually had to walk up a flight of stairs and then across several fields to get to the parking lot. That was a big disaster, and there wasn't a lot of space for the number of people having to leave that field during our weather problems at that tournament. And if you haven't noticed, I keep moving because the sun through these trees is a killer. So sorry about that if the perspective keeps changing a little bit. It's not really my intention, but yeah, that's the situation I'm at. But besides that, besides the distance to get to and from the parking lot being much closer, which made the weather more bearable. Of course, the tents were bigger too, but we'll get into those in just a moment. There seemed to be plenty of parking in the parking lot. I know in tournaments past, even like non-national tournaments, we end up creating our own parking lots and things like that. So it was nice to have a nice paved parking lot the entire time, and it seemed like it was, consistent for everybody on the field. I didn't hear any complaints from anybody about parking being an issue, so that was really good to hear. And then next up is tents, and the tents are pretty good at this shoot. It would have been nice if they could get just longer, continuous tents. They were much bigger than like the little practically easy ups we've had in the past. They were bigger than easy ups, but when you compare the two, these tents were a big improvement over the tents we've had in the past. They weren't as nice as the tents at SoCal and the Gator Cup, but still pretty good. You still had gaps though in between them every so often, so if it was raining, you could get wet unexpectedly, and yeah, it was all right. It did its job, and it was a lot better than national tournaments in the past and just other tournaments in the past in general. So big improvement in the right direction. I'm sure the tents are really expensive to rent, so maybe that's part of it too, and or the availability of a tent that's just as wide but even longer, that's continuous. There's probably not a large demand for it. I don't know. I don't run them, but I am more than willing to give my opinion and experience on these tournaments to hopefully improve it for everybody, including myself, in the future. So next up is the practice field, and I feel like they did a really good job setting this up. I don't know if it was a bonus. It probably was a bonus that there weren't so many other divisions, given that it was just masters and senior archers. You didn't have the cadets and all the other younger divisions, so you didn't need target placements and things and additional targets for all those archers. So I feel like it gave them an opportunity to lay out a better practice field. Of course, it did get filled up at different points in time, but that always happens. Okay, so now on to one of the more annoying aspects of this shoot. There seemed to be some kind of interference with the timing clocks. So they ended up splitting the field into two halves, with each half having its own DOS and having its own timing clock system, and they ran, or technically were supposed to run, independently of each other. So my field that I was on was senior recurve, men and women, and masters recurve, all Olympic recurve, men and women. On the second field, it was compound, men and women, and then barebow, men and women, and the two, well, both groups were separated. But my clocks, because I was closer to the end of the recurve field and I was kind of closer to the second field, which started with barebow, we actually had interference, or some kind of interference with the clocks, where when they completed shooting, it would actually cause our clocks to either reset, or they would do very odd things, and I'm assuming it's some kind of interference problem and not anything else. Then again, I didn't set up the tournament. I liked the attempt, of how they were going about it. It definitely would have made the tournament drag on much longer and made it a real bear. Archery tournaments are enjoyable, but not when the tournament that's supposed to take, I don't know, 2 hours or so turns into 5, because you have 150 targets, all with 4 archers on them, and every end you're having an equipment malfunction or something like that, or whatever. It ends up becoming it becomes really tedious, and people get frustrated about it. That didn't seem to be a problem because of how they had the field set up. It was a little distracting though, with the clocks having some kind of interference with each other. So if we could resolve that in the future, that would be really awesome. Another thing with the clocks is, on day 1, I didn't have this problem because I was on a different target, but they reset the field, they re-ranked us based on our qualification score, and I actually moved up the field. But by moving up the field, they actually stuck a clock in the center of the field. So me being a 6-foot-tall archer, I didn't have too much of a problem, but it was kind of distracting having that clock right there in front of you. Also, the field is a soccer field normally, so there's a curve to it to let the water run off. So the middle is always higher than the sides. The problem is that you stand on one side and the target sits on the other side, so you have this small hill, I don't know, for me it's a hill, that you end up shooting over. Which isn't a problem because you can see your whole target face the whole time, and it's the same for everybody. But when you put a clock there, it does become a bit awkward having this clock sitting there, and then your target face is right below it. It's really something else. And I felt like I was lucky in a way, and the other guys on my bail thought the same way. All of us were fairly tall, I would say, say 5'10" or so plus, and we actually felt that if you were a shorter archer, and especially it's more likely to be short if you're a female shooter, you could actually run into a problem, being able to see your full target without the clock being in the way. I don't know if that was the case or not, but it was just something that we may have to keep in mind in the future, especially with that field, with that little mound, that little hill that's in the middle. The clock placement is kind of dicey because it does feels like it's going to get in the way of the target, especially for a shorter shooter. And it's always nice to try to avoid messes before they happen. So that's my experience with that. Alright, I feel like I'm a vampire running away from the sun. I am not a vampire. It just makes it a pain to edit this if the sun's turning me into a cow. Moo. Anyway, next up, there was a large participation in the mixed team and team rounds. At least, from my knowledge, this might be the best showing I've seen in a long time, as long as I can remember. I don't know if somebody has official numbers that can, dispute my claim, but it was pretty impressive to me. And it was more than just, one match and you're already in the gold, or 2 matches and you're in the gold. People had buys and stuff. This was a very serious, team and mixed team event, and it was really cool on the amount of people that participated. But it seems like they should have opened up or kept open registration for those events a little bit longer. Now, I personally didn't have a mixed team or a team, and I ended up just shooting video of those archers shooting. But there was a lot of people that came up to me and were asking me about teams and stuff on the day of official practice. And from my knowledge, by the time we started the official practice day, they had already closed or were in the process of not allowing anybody else to sign up. And it didn't seem like it was like a numbers problem. Oh, we have too many people. It was just like, oh, okay, we're done with this. Now we can put it aside, wait for everybody to rank in, and then start these. I feel like it should have ran through the entire official practice day. They should have had open registration, let anybody sign up for it, because there would have been more teams. And if our goal, basically, from my perspective, and I feel like this should be the national perspective to some degree. We run USAT events to choose our U.S. team, USAT, United States Archery Team, qualifying events. And the fact that the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo is going to have mixed team, team, and individual. Well, individual gets covered all the time, but two things that we don't do well, I feel like, in the U.S. are team and the new mixed team. So shouldn't we want to encourage as many people to shoot team and mixed team at tournaments as possible? And I think this Nationals was a perfect representation of this, and a perfect opportunity to give our team members and possible team members in the future valuable experience in team rounds. Sure, we don't have a whole bunch of Koreas and Netherlands and stuff. Like, sure, there's a lot of skill in the United States, and we're not like Korea, where we got 10 really competent teams, but everybody has a varying degree of skill, and you're still being challenged, even if you're fairly confident that you're going to be able to beat this team because your other two guys or girls are U.S. team members or whatever, or your partner for the mixed team, she or he is a good shot too, just like you. Oh, you're going to win. You should never doubt your opponent and their capabilities. Like Korea learned pretty hard a couple World Cups ago against Kazakhstan. Last time I checked, they showed them up pretty good, which was impressive. So the more practice we can get, the merrier, and it'll just make the U.S. team stronger. And I feel like this is a good example for other teams across the world. You got to practice this stuff if you want your shooters to be good at it. At least that's what makes sense to me. If I'm wrong, tell me otherwise in the comments section down below. I'm always looking for feedback and other ideas to help improve my own ideas. And one more thing on the teams and the mixed teams, especially for the senior division at 70 meters. There was a couple people that I ran into who knew people that were in the Masters division who shoot 60 meters. And they were not allowed to shoot the 70 meters with the seniors. Say it was like a father-son team, and dad's a master and the son's a senior. They weren't letting them shoot together because one's in one division and one's in the other. And I don't quite see where they're not really getting a benefit. If anything, they're shooting at a handicap because the one trains 60 and the other one's shooting 70. And archery is this family sport. It's a community sport. Yes, USAT stuff is more professional, but it's not like it's exclusive to only professionals. Our events are available to everybody to sign up, really kind of regardless of skill level. So it was kind of weird to just say that a certain division couldn't shoot with the other. Now I could see and I could understand seniors shooting in the Masters division because 70 meters down to 60, that senior should technically shoot pretty well at 60 meters. But for a master that shoots 60 meters to shoot up and have to shoot 70, even though it's a division down than theirs. But the distance is further, and they have to definitely shoot better than they do at 60 in order to have the same results at 70. So I feel like it's a fair trade-off letting the masters shoot with the seniors for these mixed team and team events. Besides, it didn't count for points. You know, you got bragging rights, but I highly doubt in a way that any of those, you know, mixed teams like that with a master and a senior were going to go and win the whole thing. And if they did, good for them. You know, it should give our just, you know, purely senior teams a challenge, and if anything, a wake-up call to say, hey, if the father and son team just beat us and we're both, you know, USA Archery team, you know, top 8ers, you know, maybe we should be practicing a lot more, because that shouldn't fly. I don't know. It's just a thought, and I would like to really hear people's ideas and comments on that. Next up is the grass. A really nice field, and for being, I guess, a more public, well, I guess it is a public field, it was in really good shape. One spot I was standing did have a, you know, kind of a hole in it, but for the most part, walking on that field, it was really nicely taken care of. But since it was so nicely taken care of, man, do they grow some thick grass in Dublin, Ohio. Like, I don't know what kind of, you know, breed of grass that is, but that was some incredibly thick grass, which can be a problem if you lose your arrows. You know, like, if you miss the target, it was a bit of a hassle trying to find your arrows in that grass. So it was smart. A couple people did bring metal detectors, and at one point in time there was actually some people walking, especially on the practice field. They were actually taking off their shoes and walking very carefully when there was nobody else on the practice field, because you could actually feel the arrows in the grass without your shoes on, which was very interesting. I never thought about that. But yeah, metal detectors seemed like the way to go. So yeah, there was definitely a trade-off. Really nice grass, looked good, super thick, but the super thick kind of shot the people in the foot in a way. If you missed the target, you paid for it. Now, there's one very important thing that we have to cover, and this is kind of on, it's not quite food, but it's on coffee and water. Yes, there was free available to everybody, coffee and water at this tournament. Pretty awesome. Generally, you don't get free coffee at all. But for the water, generally, it's only limited to archers. The water this time was for everybody, which is really cool, and made sure that, well, everybody stayed cool. And I think it was a really nice, you know, touch to the tournament. I'm sure we went through a ridiculous amount of water, but at the same point in time, it probably dropped the amount of medical incidents due to dehydration and things like that. I would think they're down. I don't get those numbers, and I don't know if we actually keep track of them, but I'm sure it was beneficial to more than just the archers for the access to the free water. And of course, who doesn't enjoy some coffee? You know, that's always a bonus too. I'm sure a lot of people were hitting that up in the morning before the shoots started to wake up and shoot some arrows. Alright, so that was all the points that I wanted to make. Overall though, this was a really great shoot. I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed talking to everybody that, you know, came here. There was a lot of fans of this channel, and just a lot of people just like checking out archery, which is a great thing to see, and that's just, you know, really what I was hoping for. So hopefully I can see you guys at the next one. For me, it'll be the Buckeye Classic, again in Dublin, Ohio, and I'll be doing a review of that after I, you know, complete it. And other than that, I just want to thank everybody that, you know, helps set up these events. We definitely couldn't do it without you, and hopefully some of my points really help improve the events in the future. And I really look forward to coming back to Dublin, Ohio, and shooting some more arrows. So with that, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and as always, happy shooting.